Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here. There was a time in the days of video stores where one might not know something. Customers would come up and ask for that movie with the guy, and he's fighting the other guy, and that's all you'd have to go on. Somehow from that, you'd steer them towards Runaway Train with Eric Roberts, and that wasn't it. On to Madigan, starring Henry Fonda, and that wasn't it. Only to realize they wanted grumpier old men. But pre-internet, that's how lawless the aisles were. Eventually there was the big dusty movie tomes, but they weren't always around. Facts could be even more scarce. I mean, you could tell anybody something and they just have to believe you. You could just be like, yeah, they used real wolves in this movie and they ate one extra, started with their face, just consumed the whole extra. Seriously, this is their only movie. And that person would just have to live with this untrue fact that you just told them about Never Cry Wolf. My point is disinformation has always been abundant with humans, and it's our duty to research things before we too spread misinformation. And I mention this because in this episode, I share something that I cross-referenced with 3 unreliable sources, who may have just been reporting what the other person was saying. But Lance is correct. The man responsible for this soundtrack is not a member of Queen. So I just want to put that out there. Also, you may be thinking that I just did an episode with Sean Baby on Blood Moon. And I did. But that was Gary Daniels' Blood Moon from 1993. This is entirely something different, so let's just get right to it. The Late Return is Blood Moon. Our guests are the hosts of Unsung Horrors podcast, and this is VHS Presents New Releases and Late Returns. Hello, and welcome to VHS Presents New Releases and Late Returns, our casual format where we first champion what is currently bringing us joy in the realms of entertainment before making a late return to a forgotten gem. I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and I would be over the moon if you would please rate and review any podcast that you listen to. Kind words are always greatly appreciated. We are VHS_podcast on Twitter and Instagram, where you'll also find our giveaways, awesome original artwork by Celine Cordero, and much more. Our guests for this episode are the hosts of the Unsung Horrors podcast. First, thank you, Erica, for being here.
Thank you, Dirk, for having me.
And Lance as well.
Yes, thank you for having us, Dirk.
Yeah, I was going to thank you both at the same time, and I was like, well, this is just an invitation for everyone to talk. That's just chaos. Erica, you are Hex Massacre on Twitter, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And Lance, you are LS Chibi?
El Shaibi.
El Shaibi.
Yeah, it's like a timid bee, my last name.
Oh, I was trying to make it an LSD thing. I apologize.
No, I like that.
It's like Cody's, his twin brother has a little thing on it. It's like, say it like shy bee, like a little bashful bee.
Oh, that's
little bumblebee. I always remember when you first told me how to pronounce it, I would remember that 80s song that, hush, hush, I do I. I was like, SCHIBI.
There you go. Shy bee.
Wow. I like that a lot. This is a very musical episode already. So if you could please just break down for our listeners, what is Unsung Horrors?
At Unsung Horrors, we focus specifically on the deeper cuts. What we do is the movies that we choose to cover, when we have a dedicated episode for those, we set a rule that at the time of recording, that film has to have fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We've had a number that we started some earlier episodes that are past that now. So if people go back and look, don't think we're cheating.
Right.
At the time of recording, they had under 1,000.
There's surprisingly been a lot of releases from movies that we've covered since we started.
When we make that happen.
Yeah, we put it out in the universe.
But besides just the individual focus episodes, we also throw in some bonus episodes here and there. Junesploitation with F This Movie, we do a recap episode of the stuff that we watched. Every October, we do a charity movie challenge called Horror Gives Back, where we donate $1 or more per horror movie that we watch, and we invite people to participate along with us for that. We're privileged here in Austin because we have a lot of film people here and authors, and so we've had a chance to do episodes with the folks from Bleeding Skull when their new book came out last year, although time is a flat circle. And then Lars Nilsson from Austin Film Society had a book come out called Warped and Faded about Weird Wednesday and American Genre Film Archives. And hopefully we'll have some more stuff like that coming soon.
And what's happening this month?
So this month we're doing April Showers of Blood. We started that last year. This is our second year. So all the movies we're selecting, it still has the under 1,000 views on Letterboxd rule, but the movie title has to contain the word blood. And there's, Dirk, I'm sure all the listeners know, there's a lot of titles to choose from.
So many.
So
Like
we just
Blood
did,
Moon, even.
Yes.
yes, it's a perfect fit.
Yes.
But yeah, Erica just did, her pick was Bloody Sect, which we recorded. And that's out right now.
I hadn't even heard of it, and I was so excited to hear you two talking about it. Because like a lot of times, unless it's a podcast that's like yours, where you're talking about movies that are very underseen or not really being talked about, I've seen a lot of stuff. And so it's so exciting to hear someone talk about something where you're like, this isn't even on my radar. What? This was even released by a label I know, and somehow I've missed this thing. So I really appreciate the work that the two of you do, the podcast in general. And it's the only time I hear two people talking about something where I'm not one of them when it's something I care about. So like when you two were talking about Plankton, and
Yes.
I've never met a person who knew of this director. And so to hear you two not only know Plankton, but the Mummy theme park and the others, all of his films, I've still never tracked down Golden Grain, but I've seen everything else.
That one's on YouTube.
It is.
Oh yeah. If you look it up under Fantastic Games, or if you go to alvaropasari.it, he's got links to all of his movies.
Oh, okay. You know what? I think maybe I watched it from there. And then when I was looking for it under Golden Grain, I still don't remember what it was, but it was one of those times where I was just spiraling through a deep dive of stuff. And with his work, it can be quite dizzying. So
yeah, you got to space it out.
Yeah. Do you have a personal favorite from him?
It's Creatures. It's Plankton. It's hard to, and then I think a follow-up to that would be Fantastic Games or Golden Grain. It's Mummy Theme Park is good too, though. And then the other two are kind of far down on the scale, but they're still endearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, The Flight to Hell and Psycho Vision, those are...
Psycho Vision, rough.
Yeah, they're tough to...
Yeah.
Like you said, you have to spread things out. Mentally, it's probably not a healthy decision to watch like 5 Al Pacino movies in a row.
Mm-mm.
It's like Ted V. Michaels, who's my pick for for our next episode. We're doing Blood Orgy of the She-Devils, and you have to spread his stuff out too. I tend to pick these directors. I'm sorry, Eric.
Don't worry. I got some pain coming for you soon. Don't worry about it.
Love it.
One question I have for you before we get into things is, where did both of your love of movies start?
Personally, for me, I had a mom who loved horror and sci-fi movies. She bought and read pretty much every Stephen King novel and Dean R. Coon's book that came out. She was a huge proponent just letting us do and watch and read whatever we wanted. So I have a twin brother. I have 2 brothers, but my twin brother and I, we did everything together, literally taking baths and everything. Let's get weird here. But we would go to the local video store every weekend and we would each get to pick a movie out, and she wouldn't tell us, no, you can't pick that due to the cover or whatever reason some parents might have for not wanting their kids to watch movies. My parents, both my parents, but my mom especially, was really into us getting into Stephen King. And when we got into Fangoria and Gore Zone magazines, that's kind of when Cody and I, that's my twin brother, would really start going down. I mean, we watch all movies, but usually the horror and science fiction were obviously our favorite genre, based on what my mom read and what we kind of grew up around. And my mom was really good about finding us really great babysitters at a young age. Usually there were sets of twins as well. So, and they would like to rent movies. That's the first time Cody and I both watched Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Mm. And from there, we were like, okay, our lives are forever changed. This is it. Yeah, ever since my mom just instilling in us this, let's rent movies every weekend, let's watch movies on TV, let's read Stephen King books, that just progressed to my love.
Yeah, mine's almost identical to Lance's. I had a mom who also was a huge Stephen King, Dean Koontz fan, saw a lot of those movies really early on. A lot of the movies that I watched as a child were more so, I watched a lot of stuff on TV, but also my dad was a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. And so I saw all of those movies super young. And I'm still a huge 80s Arnold fan to this day. You don't even have to ask me, hey, Eric, you want to watch Predator? You don't need to ask, just put it on. but it was kind of the same thing. It was a weekly thing, going to the video store. My mom was more into like the Oscars, and she would watch it every year, and she would make sure she watched all Best Picture nominees and all that stuff. I think where it really sort of flipped for me, besides watching all the movies on TV and stuff, was going to the video store more regularly. And once I was a teenager and able to go on my own, where I could go past the Blockbuster and go to the better mom and pop one. Then it started opening up a little bit. And then going to college, there was a small video store in the small college town that was walking distance. And I was dating a film major at the time. I will never do that again. I mean, never going to date a college kid again. I'm 43, hello. But I mean, that was a huge education for me. And I know this is a big part of your love for movies, Dirk, is like growing up in a video store. And there's just something to be said for browsing the aisles and what catches your eye and reading the back of the box, or maybe even not reading it and just going based on the cover art. That was a big part of it's still why something catches my eye on Letterboxd. I'm like, ooh, that looks fun. And just based on what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I do miss that. We had 2 video stores here up until pandemic hit, and they both closed, unfortunately. So we don't have those right now. I think there's hope for one potentially reopening because the inventory was bought by someone involved with Alamo Draft House here. So we might be getting one back. But the bigger one, the huge one, that inventory is just sitting in storage containers right now, and it's depressing.
Yeah, here in Portland, we have Movie Madness, and they're connected to the Hollywood Theater. So there's hope if the Alamo acquired those tapes that a similar sort of entity will exist where they can symbiotically keep each other alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope so, because it means so much to me. And it's why I have an 8-year-old, and she's wild and awesome. And now she's pulling stuff off my shelf and being like, can I watch this? And I'm like, not yet. And then she's like, but I want to. And I'm like, yes, that's the feeling. That's the thing you're going to chase. I just love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which brings us to the big question. These are listener submitted questions that I put in this little jewel case, and then I shake it and one fell out. So I'll just pretend that was intentional and see what our random listener question is. YNF movie pod, your next favorite movie pod. Oh, this is from Josh. Favorite movie with a horse, but isn't about horses.
Ooh.
I think Lance and I might have the same answer, actually, after I say mine.
Let's hear it first.
Double Story, 1985.
Oh.
Vinegar Syndrome release, folks, pick it up.
There it is.
Yeah, that movie is maddening. And there is a horse that just nonstop, repetitive, multiple scenes is just running and neighing for, I guess, not a real reason. It's just there to cause more confusion.
It might be possessed. Who knows? Nobody knows anything. Maybe the ship, the galleon that just came out of nowhere is there to pick it up. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe the mummy's going to ride it. I don't know.
With the blue gook. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's a very specific question to make you think of horses and films. Double Story, I think, is my pick as well. That would that's one of my favorites. But there's so many like spaghetti westerns out there that Django and everybody and their close horse and stuff. So let's do a Double Story.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of horses. I find their muscular legs off-putting. But I would say The Never-Ending Story. I think just for child trauma. I think, spoiler alert, but it doesn't go well for the horse in that movie. Yeah, I think that's the time I cared the most about horses.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a double feature for everybody. Okay, that brings us to new releases, and we're going to start with print. So, Erica, anything that you've currently read?
Yeah, I usually keep a stack of books next to my bed just because I usually don't read one thing straight through. I usually will kind of alternate between fiction and nonfiction. So right now I'm going in between 3 books. First one is by the author of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's A Delicate Truth, John Le Carre. That's that one.
Okay.
I've also got Shamya Dasgupta's Don't Disturb the Dead, the story of the Ramsey brothers.
Oh.
I'm about halfway through that. And once I get through it, we'll probably get to a Ramsey brother movie on the podcast, but not Mahakal because that has over 1,000, but we'll get one eventually. We'll figure one out. And then the other one is probably I don't want to play favorites with what I'm reading right now, but Hellraisers by Robert Sellers. It's the life and inebriated times of Richard Burton, Richard Harris, Peter O'Toole, and Oliver Reed. And
Whoa.
it's basically just going through their careers and all the stories about how drunk they got. And it's great.
That sounds awesome.
It
It
is.
does.
Yeah, it's super great. So,
Hellraisers.
yes.
Okay, Lance, anything?
I haven't been reading novels, and I'm a big fan of nonfiction biographies, but I haven't been reading books as much as I'd like to or make time to. But I do open and crack open a lot of reference books daily for preparing for podcasts or just looking through my watch list and trying to pull some blurbs. I recently picked up Are You in the House Alone? It's a compendium that's edited by Amanda Reyes, who's local here in Austin as well. She does some programming or she assists with some programming for like Austin Film Society and their TV programming. Yeah, this book, Are You in the House Alone? It covers made-for-TV films, includes write-ups, reviews for hundreds of television movies, mostly horror and thrillers that aired during the 60s through the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a ton of fun. Big recommendation for people who are wanting to find underseen horrors for thrillers, because most of these you can find on YouTube.
Yeah.
And most of them, if they're on Letterboxd, which most are, they're very underseen. So we've been looking at some of these movies in the book to maybe do a future episode for Unsung Horrors. And it's just like this is a great guide in that regard. Yeah, and then other books are just kind of the classics, like Stephen Thrower's Nightmare USA, that giant beast. Like the attention to detail and the knowledge that he kind of throws, that he puts on page for every film is mind-blowing. And then we already brought up Bleeding Skull.
Yeah.
They have 2 books in the Trash Horror Odyssey books for the 80s and 90s. I crack those open weekly just because, I don't know, I love their write-ups. They're really funny. We've been lucky to have them on the Unsung Horrors podcast, but when you read their reviews and write-ups, they're so enthusiastic and positive about these movies. And when you talk to the people, it's just as infectious as when you're reading their books. So their books really put me in a good mood when I'm just thinking about film. Those are my go-to books. I'm hoping I can fit in some more biographies and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I love Stephen Thrower's writing. I came across him pretty late, I think. And my favorite band of all time is Coil. And when I saw his name on the spine, I was like, this can't be the same Stephen Thrower. And it is. And I was just like, this is amazing. I was so excited. I can't even explain, but that's wonderful. I have less casual reading than that, I'll say. My wife just wanted to go see David Byrne's last performance on Broadway. So we flew to New York, which means I had 5.5 hours in an airplane from one coast to the other. So I started over and finished Cruel Jaws, the novel of Cruel Jaws by Brad Carter. It rules. This book is so good. It's so fun. There's way more talk of balls than in the movie, I think. This is really great. And then on the way back, I didn't have anything to read. And so I grabbed Josh Peck's biography that just came out called Happy People Are Annoying. He is from Drake and Josh, a Nickelodeon TV show that we're all too old to have been watching, but I happen to have seen some of it before, and I knew he was in the movie ATM, and he was I think in Mean Creek, and I didn't know what happened to him. And it's a wonderful read about what it was like for him as a child star to go, I guess he was like 15 when all of a sudden the show hit, and now he has, had like millions of people following him and whatnot. And then it was big on Vine, and then that disappeared. So 9 million people were following him, and then that was gone. And then he was a kind of an influencer, sort of in a way, and then wondering if he was still doing acting. And then he was in the Turner and Hooch Disney reboot TV show. And it's just, I just find these type of biographies so fascinating. The idea that someone's perceived as a star can just dissipate so quickly, and then the person just can't get work. And we all 3 watch movies where these are people's names that aren't talked about that often, but at least at this time when we were talking about the movie, they were making movies. And I think that that's pretty amazing. So it's a super casual read. I read it in flight, but I just wanted to throw that out there because we're talking about a 90s Australian slasher film, and why not mention a Nickelodeon TV star? So balance. That brings us to music. Anything currently bringing you joy, new or old, in music?
I'm so boring when it comes to music. I listen to the same stuff that I was listening to in high school, just 70s and 80s punk. And I don't even really listen that often because I used to usually listen when I was driving for the most part. And I don't do that really at all anymore. So yeah, I'm boring. Lance probably has some good stuff because he's got a good vinyl collection.
Well, I mean, I pretty much just go to my go-tos most of the time. I listen to music a lot at work, just throwing on my headphones. Dirk, you mentioned David Byrne. I guess this is American Utopia.
Yes. Yeah.
Broadway. Yeah, so I saw that when he came to Austin in 2018 for the Austin City Limits Music Festival, and he scheduled one solo show at the Bass Concert Hall on campus, and it was for American Utopia. I think of that daily, that live show. It blew me away. I love David Byrne and he's involved in.
We were talking about this because my wife, her brother, and I standing there, and I'm like, yeah, David Byrne's in a live show. Fine. I just didn't think about the fact that he's kind of always been around in my lifetime, and watching when I became aware of like art and movies and TV and stuff, like David Byrne was there. He permeated my culture and life and the movies that he was in and a part of. And so he walked out on stage and we just all three were weeping. It was the weirdest, most intense, visceral. I didn't expect it. The first note they played of a Talking Heads song, I was like, oh, we're going there. Like suddenly I'm watching the best live Talking Heads show that I could have ever hoped to see in my entire life. And I thought I was just going to see just a Broadway something. And it was the last night. So it was so emotionally charged for them because it was the end of everything. And all of these people were there that had been at the show so many times. And you could tell like they were like vibrating with electricity for this thing. And it ended and they were giving it out flowers and we were all just trying to hold it together. It was just really intense.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Have you watched like Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I just saw like a clip of it because I didn't want to like see too much of it, but I saw the one that was about a donkey dick or something, whatever that song was.
That's on American Utopia, that song.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Byrne I love, but my go-tos, I am going to my first live performance later this month for Ween. I love the band Ween.
Oh yes, I've heard this on the podcast.
I've seen them, a dozen times at least. There's this band from Oklahoma City called Broncho. I'm a big fan of super catchy songs, The Cars. But yeah, my go-to bands, Baroness, Jane's Addiction. I'm always a Smashing Pumpkins fan. I listen to them all the time. I do listen to a lot of soundtracks and stuff, soundtracks and original scores. That's probably the most new music I would say that I buy on vinyl. I just picked up Voyager 3's New York Ninja, that recent release from Vinegar Syndrome. They actually completed that movie and released it this year, I think. It was earlier this year. Most of the stuff I pick up is just old records that I had on CD at one point or cassette and that I need on vinyl. The same go-tos.
Nice. And Erica, what are some of these 70s, 80s punk bands you're mentioning?
Oh, just normal rotation. It will be like Ramones, Dead Boys,
nice,
Clash, stuff like that.
Awesome.
A lot of Southern California stuff. I don't want to just say Southern because I love Dead Kennedys and they're Northern California, but I grew up in Southern California. So a lot of those bands like Black Flag and stuff, they're all around from that area. So I'm not old enough to have seen them. I'm not that old, but feeling like you're from a certain area, you cling to those. I don't know if you could call them local bands, but if they're from where you're living, it feels that way, I guess.
Yeah, I've gone to concerts just because I knew Jello Biafra was going to make an appearance for one song. So
that's enough.
I loved Dead Kennedys. When there was a bootleg DVD I tracked down of a concert them playing in like 1977, it was like my friend Aaron and I just sat there just awestruck because you've heard the albums, but you just didn't know what the live show looked like. This is pre-internet. And so, man, I think we probably watched it 3 or 4 times before we had to return it. It was awesome. I just have 2 that I was bouncing around recently. The first is The Exploited. They have an album called The Massacre from 1990. It's a Scottish punk band. I had this CD in 1990 when I was trying to figure out what's my musical tastes. I don't know. And I mean, I just checked it out just the other day. I was like, I used to listen to this, and I put it on and I knew every word. They have a song called The Massacre that opens the album, and it's just them screaming, "The Massacre, why?" over and over and over. And I love it. I love the whole thing. Porno Slut's a great song, super catchy. So if you're into that. And then the other one is Morbid Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is controversial, but they put out an album called Iliad Dividium Insanus. It's a remix album of one of their last albums that was not highly regarded by the Morbid Angel people. I know because their fans have let me know. But I really like this remix album because there's like gabber remixes and industrial remixes and stuff that's just like having that guttural metal vocal and the cut up guitars, but also electronics is something that very much interests me. So if anyone wants to hear some really interesting interpretations of Morbid Angel, that's a remix album from 2012, which brings us to games. I don't know if either of you play any types of games.
I have not played video games since I lost a semester of college to Tekken 3.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Understandable.
What about like tabletop board games?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we haven't busted that out yet because
Thing.
we don't have someone to translate the rule book because it's a book. It's the thing that Mondo put out.
Okay.
Outposts. Yeah, it's that game. And my boyfriend wanted it for his birthday, so I bought it for him. And then he opened it up and he was like, I don't understand how to play. I'm like, the fuck? I don't know how to do this. So yeah, we haven't done that yet.
I don't play many video games either. I think I still have my PlayStation 3, and that's, I've disconnected it. And sometimes I'll jump on and play Framed and Star Wars Wordle.
Nice.
Tabletop games, I used to play some with my older brother and his kids. You know, some of the Star Wars miniatures and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm not too busy, but I'm just focused on watching as many movies as I can.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a total time suck for sure. My friend Jail and I were playing Elden Ring, which is a medieval open world. It's got a huge following from the people that made Dark Souls. It's very hard. I'm terrible at it, but I only really play video games to hang out with my friend Jail anyway. So it doesn't really matter what game I'm playing. It's something to do. And that takes us to television. Anything you're watching episodically lately?
Nope.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I don't have cable. I don't have any paid streaming services. I mean, it's funny because like all the shows that people are talking about, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I muted Elden Ring on Twitter because I was like, I don't know what this is, and it keeps fucking popping up. Muting that word. But yeah, I have no TV shows for me.
We subscribe to all the streaming services. My wife loves television shows. I mean, she's way more into them than I am. I'm into them. I don't watch a whole lot of series. We do watch Amazing Race together every season. That's always fun for us. But I did watch most of the episodes of Severance. That just had its season finale. That's the one with Adam Scott, Patricia Arquette, Christopher Walken's in it, John Turturro. Have you seen it, Dirk?
No, I've just heard about it from Sean Baby on a recent episode. He was telling me about it, and it sounded like he was having sort of brain aneurysm. He said that John Turturro and Christopher Walken are dating in it or something?
Yeah, well, the whole premise is people can volunteer to sever their at-home real life when they go into work. So when they go into work, they don't remember anything from their outside life. When they come out of work, it all takes place when you get in this elevator. And when you get out of the elevator and go back, leave your job to your home life, you forget everything about your work. So everything's severed in that regard. And a lot of people want to do it because they have depressed Adam Scott's character. This isn't a spoiler or anything. It's definitely worth checking out. They were just picked up for a second season. He was real depressed because he lost his wife. So he hated thinking about it at work. So he signed up for this severance program. And it's very well done. The acting, I mean, the cast alone is just phenomenal, but it's like what your friend said, it's emotionally exhausting. Thinking about the way they present everything, if this happened to you, how would you react? There's a lot of those moments. So it leaves you thinking a lot. I've watched most of those episodes. I haven't seen it straight through. That's kind of how it is for a lot of the shows that my wife watches. I do want to watch a lot of the new Marvel series that I haven't yet. We have Disney Plus. I watched The Mandalorian. I loved it. I haven't watched the Book of Boba Fett. Basically, if I put TV on, I'll watch 3 episodes of Golden Girls in a row because it just happens to be on, or Seinfeld or something. I don't really actively put on or start streaming a show unless my wife does it.
Yeah, same. We'll put something on in the evening. That's when we do emails and things like that. But I don't often pay attention that much. It's more just like something in the background because I feel bad because I'm going to watch something the night before. But we're watching Killing Eve right now. I don't know if you've seen that show at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. It's Sandra Oh's the star of it. And it's about female assassin kind of situation in their relationships. The soundtrack is really good. It's odd and quirky in the best possible way. And it doesn't feel like they're trying to make it go forever, which is my problem with a lot of episodic television is I'm like, just quit milking the cash cow. Like it's just, the whole point is just to go forever. How exhausting. I just can't. That's why I like movies. I'm like, just, it'll end. Like,
yep.
Yeah, there's a runtime.
Oh, let's just talk about movies. Anything you've seen lately?
The last movie I saw at the theater may have been Ericus too. We saw it separately, but Dennis Hopper's Out of the Blue. Mm-hmm. That played here in Austin, AFS Cinema, Austin Film Society, which is a nonprofit art house theater. And this movie's so good. It was released in 1980, but it never really got a full release. Very minimal release, very few eyes on it. They recently received this restoration for limited theatrical release. It was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest in 2020, but that was canceled. So it sat for a couple of years. Then it's starting to hit some theaters around the country. And Severin are now releasing it on Blu-ray, which is a great
that's awesome.
A great thing to see. Dennis Hopper took over as director. He wasn't the director, he was just going to be the star, but the director had a falling out. He picked it up and just put his style all over it. And then Linda Manns is the lead actress. She plays this punk teen, CB, who is just captivating as hell, makes the movie. I mean, it is all about her. Dennis Hopper's her terrible father. I love it. I can't wait to get the Severin release to check out all the special features. I also watched something that's fairly new, which was Questlove's documentary, Summer of Soul.
Oh, yeah.
That actually won the best documentary Oscar. And I agree. I mean, I haven't seen really the others. It's amazing. It's about the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was pretty much the Woodstock equivalent, celebrating Black music, Black pride culture. It actually took place in Harlem the same year as Woodstock, which is arguably a big reason why it's so unknown, because Woodstock gets all the coverage for these musical acts, but it focuses on the community at the time in Harlem. Everybody put it together, all the musicians and the live acts that played. I'm a sucker for music documentaries, like Scorsese's The Last Waltz is one of my go-to movies. I love it so much. But Summer of Soul made me feel a lot of the feelings I get while watching The Last Waltz. It's just so well put together, and there's a lot of talking heads that are broken up, or I guess a lot of footage from that era that's broken up with live performances. But that one's on Hulu. It's on Disney Plus. I'd recommend everybody watch that. And then lately I've been diving into Ted V. Michaels for our podcast. Most of the stuff I watch is for the podcast.
Yeah.
We like to watch as many movies from the director or the cast or crew that we're watching. So Ted V. Michaels is what's going on right now. I did watch his directorial debut called Strike Me Deadly from 1963, which is unlike his other stuff because it's really well made. Like, it's his first movie. He has a great cast. It's about this park ranger who witnesses a murder in the forest he's working, and the murderer lights the body on fire, which spreads into this forest fire. So the movie's essentially him chasing and kidnapping the park ranger and his wife who witnessed him commit the murder, while all the other rangers are dealing with evacuating campers and putting out this forest fire. There's a lot going on, but it works so well in 80 minutes. If that interests you, Ted V. Michaels, I'm hoping to watch as many films as I can before our next episode.
My movie watching is generally sort of all over the place. I'm very mood-based when I pick a movie. I know a lot of people will sometimes get on a kick and just, I'm going to watch a bunch of kung fu movies all in a row. And it's like, well, I already kind of have to do that for the podcast. So not kung fu movies, I wish. But when I'm just picking something on my own to watch for whatever else, I try to mix up genres a lot. So that being said, I have been watching a bunch of PM entertainment movies the last week for some reason, because my Tubi algorithm is telling me that. I did finally break down and watch Argento's Dracula 3D, and
I've never seen that.
it is awful.
It's on Tubi?
No, I have the DVD.
Oh, can I borrow it?
Yep, you can.
Can I have it?
You can have it. There were a couple of fun PM entertainment movies. One of them was this one with, what's his name, Gary Daniels, I think, called Recoil. Yeah. And I honestly think it has the most car explosions and crashes I've ever seen in a single movie. And that's saying a lot for PM entertainment. It was a lot, but I was like, I think this might literally be the most. But I think that was on Tubi, Recoil, late 90s. One that I watched recently that I really liked, I kind of got on a little bit of an Eric Roberts kick recently, because I know it's random, but a couple months ago, the Coca-Cola Kid was programmed at Austin Film Society. And I was like, I forgot how good Eric Roberts is, because the trash that he's doing now, you're just kind of like, okay. But coming out of the gate, his very first movie that he ever did, King of the Gypsies, 1978. And he is a baby-faced, beautiful man in that. And it's basically about this Romani family, 3 generations of it. And he's the youngest, and the grandfather is trying to get him to stay with the family and take over as king of the gypsies when he passes, but he's trying to distance himself from it and move into the modern times. And so it's more of a family drama, but Eric Roberts is excellent in it. I think I watched that one on Canopy. So definitely recommend that. And other than that, I'm going to be doing more of the same as Lance this week. Ted V. Michaels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the week this comes out, I'm on Film Feast, and we personally ranked the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. So I've been watching 9 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and that was pretty much most of my free time. But I did last night watch something that I bought while we were in New York. It's the Vinegar Syndrome, Hard Rock Zombies, and Slaughterhouse Rock Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen Slaughterhouse Rock in a very long time, and it was really nice to see it. It looks really great. For anyone that hasn't seen it, I guess that there's a curse involved, and there's a guy having dreams about a man in a sewer, and the music is all by Devo, which is the real reason to watch it because the soundtrack's wild. And then Tony Basil appears in it, and she is so bizarre that she's there. Every time she's on screen, I'm like, Tony Basil? Like I think her bangs are made of yarn in one scene. It's really bizarre, but quite a hoot. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's great set dressing in it. If you enjoy 80s films that are somewhat dreamy, I'd recommend it for sure. Which means it's time for our late return. So we're going to make our late return to Blood Moon from 1990. The synopsis is: a stealthy and unseen killer decides to stalk teenage lovers at a headmistress's boarding school in Australia. Directed by Alec Mills, who did Blood Moon and Dead Sleep in 1990. Did either of you find Dead Sleep?
No.
Okay, I was just checking. Your show has incredible research. So the second I saw that there was another movie and had Linda Blair in it, I was like, God, I better watch it because they'll both will have seen it. I just know it. He's mostly known as a camera operator for Return of the Jedi, Octopussy, For Your Eyes Only, Our Majesty's Secret Service, Death on the Nile, and Shout at the Devil, which is pretty amazing. Our cinematographer is John Stokes, who did this, Dead Sleep, a ton of TV, and 1996's Robo Warriors. Music, it's Brian May of Queen? What? Like, how? He did the soundtrack for Mad Max, Road Warrior, Stage Fright, aka Nightmares, 1980. Patrick, Missing Action 2, The Quest, and Cloak and Dagger, to name a few. Plus, he's in Queen, and he's doing the soundtrack for Blood Moon.
Well, this is a different Brian May.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I'm positive it's not Brian May from Queen. I think it's like an Australian composer. That's why he usually does just like Australian.
Oh, because I was reading on I even found a video on YouTube, but I guess people could just be as confused as I was because...
And I thought the same thing. Like when I first saw Mad Max, actually, when I saw music by Brian May, I was like, holy shit, Brian May from Queen? But I searched, this was years and years ago. I could be completely wrong. I think it's a completely different Brian May.
He should add an initial. Shouldn't he know? Because then it's like his credit is going to Brian May of Queen.
Literally everywhere I looked, that's what it said. So, everyone's
It's like Warren Ellis. Warren Ellis,
yes.
And then there's the book writer.
The thing that came out, I was like, the fucking comic book writer? And then I was like, oh, wait, that's not him. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those situations.
Initials matter when you have the name that's similar to somebody else.
I could be wrong.
No, we'll never know now. But
it's a mystery. That's what's so compelling.
Just leave it as a mystery.
Because there's also the band Vice in this movie, who are from Brisbane, Australia, who did Standing in the Line of Fire, which is the first song we hear. And that was written by Jean Beauvoir of the Plasmatic band back in the punk days. And then they do Keep Holding On. Both those songs are on their 1990 album, Take Me Home. And then the last song is Blood Moon, which is credited as written by Brian May. And it's the Brian May of Queen, I think, because that's what this person was saying anyway. So I have no idea right now. I feel, but we'll figure it out. And yeah, the film stars Leon Lissick, who we know from Time Bandits, Unbearable Lightness of Being, Helen Thompson, who plays Mary. She was a Kangaroo Jack, and the upcoming Elvis movie from Baz Luhrmann.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, just to tie it back to the book I was reading about actors and how wild careers can be.
Yeah.
Christina Moore is in this. She was in Dead Sleep, a bunch of TV, including the H2O Just Add Water series, which is a series my 8-year-old daughter loves about Australian mermaids. I've seen all of it. And then we'll just take it from there. We'll just open it up to your thoughts and experiences with the 1990 film Blood Moon.
Sometimes I'll write notes while I'm watching. If I'm like, I definitely need to talk about this. This was one where I watched it and then I just wrote down some thoughts afterward. My very first one was Lance loves Vice. Like, I just knew it. Like, after that scene, I was like, Lance loves this band. Like, I just know that.
Yeah, there's a scene where they're playing at a party live, or a dance. for all the students and stuff. I feel like it was a missed opportunity because I am a sucker for bands and movies.
Mhm.
Easy Action and Blood Tracks, Bang Tango, Luigi Cozzi's
Oh
The
yeah.
Black Cat, Alice Cooper's Victor Raven and Monster Dog. Give me more of this. I always feel like when there's a band like this, and it's a great production, I mean, they really focused in on their live performances. I think they played 2 songs and
Yeah.
they just kind of showed characters talking about nothing really relevant or then just dancing.
Mhm.
I feel like a murder should have happened. Like, don't
Yeah.
don't miss this opportunity. You have Vice on stage. I had to look them up too. They toured with Stryper,
Of course.
which is weird. But they have this album. I'm just going to tell everybody, Google image Vice Daddy's Little Girl.
Oh.
And it is the most disgusting, like, I can't believe they toured with Stryper, who are, known to be kind of this Christian rock. But it is a terrible album cover. I did love that scene. I just felt like it was a missed opportunity.
That's weird in this movie.
Yeah. Let's just say the first hour is just a missed opportunity
Yeah.
in this movie. I feel like the whole first hour is just wasted and pointless.
Yeah.
I get establishing characters, but there's really no lead character. There's no real standout characters that
No.
you can get into. So it's just an hour.
They continue to introduce characters like 45 minutes in. It's like, oh, now this is the main person? What?
Yeah, like, oh, okay, here's a cop in a Speedo. He's now going to be in the rest of the movie, but we're like an hour in.
I forgot he was there earlier to break up the fight between them.
Okay.
But I totally forgot about him because they introduced so many freaking characters in between that and him at the beach. And yeah, I was like, I cannot keep track of all these people.
My favorite thing in the fight is the cop breaks it up and then Billy hurt his leg in the fight. And as they're carrying Billy to the car, the cop says, hold on to his legs and see if you can stop the bleeding. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
He's got like a strawberry.
It's like,
yeah.
it's real weird. I really like how this movie looks. I think it's very 1990s, but it's competently shot. When I put the DVD in, I was shocked. I was like, oh, this actually looks clear. I was expecting a really bad VHS rip of this because it's not put out by anybody yet. I have a feeling Vinegar Syndrome or somebody is going to put it out like next month. But that's one thing that I really was shocked by. And then all of the weird choices that this film makes or doesn't make. It introduces that eyes are being removed and then a full hour and a half or something goes on without any of that taking place. It is really crazy.
It's something I learned to appreciate as I was watching it because it is so confusing, especially that first hour, 10 minutes. There's just nothing really going on. But I embraced how confusing it all was. And there's some predictable moments. I mean, it goes through a lot of the tropes, in the very beginning, a girl running through the forest, being chased by the killer, falling down. There's a lot of running downstairs and falling down, kids spiking the punch at the dance. I enjoyed all those tropes, but there was nothing really special about it. I mean, it was, the murder weapon is cool. It's presented as cool, but it's not used. The first kills are very in the dark. It looks great with the blue lighting. It's a little too dark sometimes, but in the beginning, but I was like, okay, I can deal with a lot of these murders. I think this will work. But now you don't get murders for a long time.
No, the killer is very athletic because he digs these holes that then when they reveal who the killer was, I was like, hold on. And I also love where there's a little crane shot that goes down a hill to show that they're buried here with 2 giant rocks on top of them. And I was like, well, that's going to come back. Nope, never does.
That didn't come back. Yeah,
No one finds a bunch of rocks later on. Just
the killer reveal, obviously they try to set up a few red herrings right off the bat. They're trying to set it up as the old nun.
Yeah.
And it's like, thanks, that's obvious it's not her. And then just a few others. And then when they finally reveal it, I'm just like, the schlubby old guy. Okay, he's the killer. And then, you mentioned the eyeballs being removed and the fingers and stuff, which I think he was feeding to the animals in his back room.
I think so.
He's like, I got a treat for you because he pulled the jar out.
Oh, yeah, that's what.
And then he brought stuff back there and he's like, I got a treat for you. And my only thoughts were these animals need bigger cages because that bunny was in a cage that was like the size of the bunny.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
It's the only time in a movie I've seen, because there's a lot of breasts in this movie, a lot of groping and making out. It's the only time I've seen two people making out in a forest, only to be interrupted by two people that also wanted to make out in that exact same spot in the forest. That was it. That was I was like, wait, that was the whole thing we're shown, is that they're like, we got to get out of here. And two other people sit down right where they were and start making out. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
I guess that's the spot. I don't know.
the high traffic site there.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like an Australian Halloween 90210 special episode,
Yeah.
but with nudity.
Yeah.
It has this made for TV feel to it. And I think a lot of that has to do with Brian, who knows which Brian May, but Brian May's score. So it starts off,
It's so crazy.
it makes no sense. Some of the more tense and the scenes with murder and stuff, that they work, but then you kind of go to the next scene and it sounds like a romantic comedy or something from an Adam Sandler Happy Madison production. I could not figure out the tone he was going for. And what's funny is we just watched Cujo, and composer Charles Bernstein, he does an amazing job of combining these two different tones of Cujo being a happy, healthy dog, Disney-esque movie, and then him transforming into this killer monster. And he marries the melodies together super well, but this Brian May score, and he usually nails it. I love the Mad Max, the turkey shoot stuff. I was so confused by the tone. I was focusing more on how bizarre that was and watching some of what the characters were saying.
Yeah, that's totally. And for me, sometimes I'll watch something and that's the ride that I get from it. And I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good. And I'll tell someone about it and they'll be like, that movie is terrible. And I'm like, I don't know. And it could be something like the soundtrack, like for this, or just everything outside of the woods. Anyway, I thought it was competently shot, but the script is like so weird. And that is the floppiest fight I've ever seen. I wrote it down in my notes. Is like when they scuffle, I was like, everyone's just kind of like made of rubber and floppy. It was very off-putting. It's very strange. A lot of grabbing and sliding on each other. It's like, oh
Yeah. The script is a problem because there's so many subplots and dead ends and just what was the points of that? The main girl, her mom being an actress, she's trying to get a hold of her and talk to her and her mom's won't talk. Who cares? Like, why does that matter? And then when they're at the swimming hole and she thinks dude just cares about her because of who her mom is or something. It's like none of this stuff even comes back. The whole prank of luring the guys out of the dance and then hosing them down. Like this whole rivalry thing never goes anywhere. Every new plot that's introduced just dead ends.
Yeah.
There was one point when the killer is heading back to his classroom when the two girls have broken in there to try to get the test.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember thinking in my head, oh, they're trying to this is like the most tension that's happening in this. It's about a fucking test, not even about being stalked by a killer. Why is this being established as being super tense? And to be nice to the movie, I haven't said anything nice about it yet, except that I do like the weapon that was never used.
Yeah.
One of the girls who had broken into the classroom to steal that, her death was great. Came just grabbing her head and smashing her on the desk. I was like, that was good.
Part. That was my favorite part. I was like, this is when it's going to pick up. Is like when he's just bashing her head while her friend is just standing at the door that she knows is locked, being like, get out of there. He's going to bash her head like 17 more times. We'll see it.
I like the phone booth kill too, where he makes that girl
belly stab.
Yeah.
Where he just leaves her too. He doesn't even put a rock on her.
Well, that's the thing. He's not a consistent killer. That really drove me nuts. I mean, he's obviously, this is a recurring theme for him. As we learn in the messy finale that he's been killing before and they're moving to a new country.
They're from Boston. I love the part where he sees Mary and Kevin kissing and Miles is just like, oh, fuck that. So he goes home and he takes a shower and then he just sees them showering next to him. I was like, what is this? What is happening here?
Yeah, once you figure out who the killer is, they do a great job.
They let you know pretty early who the killer is.
Yeah, I mean, it was close around the hour mark, I think.
Yeah.
But there's still like 40 minutes.
Right.
Once Miles Sheffield is recognized as the killer, it does get more interesting, I think.
Yeah. I mean, getting back to your thing about not being consistent with how he's killing, I don't mind if a killer is not consistently using the same weapon, as long as what they're doing is innovative. Like if you think about like a really good Giallo, you might have a straight razor murder, you might have a mirror glass shattering on something. But this is just frustrating that it's inconsistent because none of the kills are interesting except for the girl who gets her head bashed in the classroom.
Yeah. I just saw the reboot of Friday the 13th the other night. I watched that as well because it's from the same director as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. And people were saying it was really good. And I was like, I hated it. So I don't know, but I'll rewatch it. Maybe I was totally wrong. And the first kill happens off camera. And I was like, you can't do that. You could
No.
buy so much horror goodwill with just a on-screen practical kill early on in the film. Like then we're just like, oh, okay, we know what we're in for. But when you start off with these weird, we're not going to show you things, I'm like, well, then why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just, I mean, the finale, the one thing that also is like, where the fuck did this come from is
man.
when at the end, the finale, I respect it. I did respect it. It's a mess. I hated the ending.
Oh, yeah.
The finale was very interesting when the nun shows up and has with her a jar of acid that or some sort of chemical that she throws on Miles' face.
This part. Yeah. When it shows his face like half melted, I was like, all right, here we go. Because you got to just keep going up the hill with this. Things have to escalate, get wilder, get crazier. And instead, they end it, spoiler alert, for anyone still interested in Blood Moon, with 2 shotgun shots going off, and we're outside the house where it's happening.
Yeah, it felt like, okay, they're cutting to a commercial. Like this, it was a terrible, terrible ending. Again, back to the nun throwing acid in Miles' face. I love it because she throws this acid in his face. He's reacting, runs off with his flesh burning off. And then she looks over at Mary and she's like, you should know better than being out here with a boy in the woods.
She sticks to her guns, man.
Yeah, she's definitely that nun. I felt like at the end of the film, it was like they forgot to film it. And then they just go, oh, God, just a still frame of the house and we'll put in the 2 gunshot sounds. And that's a wrap. Like they just.
Yeah, play.
Yeah.
And then play Vice's cover or the original song Blood Moon by Vice, written by Brian May.
Yeah, which won me over. When the second they started singing Blood Moon, I was like, hold on now.
Yeah, I wish more horror movies did that, wrote original songs for themes, or like a horror theme for the movie. I love that about this.
Oh, it would be good. I think one thing that just overall, to be fair, I've only seen maybe a handful of Australian horror movies, but from what I've seen, they all feel like TV movies. They all just feel tame. I love TV movies, but but they're not
TV movies like that.
Exactly. And I'm just like, I know what to expect with that. My scale is different. My gauge is set for when I'm like, okay, this is a TV movie starring Robert Culp, I'm in. But these movies, Australian horror movies, just always seem so tame to me. Whether it's not even just horror movies, but I watched some rape revenge movies, and they also just have weird tone and pacing problems with them, and just overall always just feel like they never really go for it as far as the sleaze and the meanness or anything like that. And that just says something about the Australian people. Y'all are just probably really nice folks. I'm just going to say that about the Australians.
Have you seen Coming Home in the Dark?
No, I have not.
I haven't either.
I highly recommend you watch Coming Home in the Dark. It came out.
Will that change my perspective?
Well, it came out last year, and without spoiling it for you, I will say that it involves something that those who listen to Unsung Horrors know you really enjoy in a movie.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, she'll definitely watch that.
Okay. Especially if it's got that in it. Now I have to watch it. So
yeah, I would love to hear your take on Coming Home in the Dark.
That's the thing is, like, new horror movies I tend to have a lot of problems with, but I mean, I'll watch it because it's got that element.
Yeah, it's more of a really dark thriller kind of situation. But yeah, Lindsay Wilkins of Schlock and Awe put that on my radar, and I couldn't wait to see it. And then my wife and I watched it, and it was really tense. We were shocked. Great acting. But that's something I could talk a lot more about than Blood Moon, I suppose.
Lance and I have talked before about how, we really like going backwards and watching older movies and discovering stuff that we never saw when we were younger, maybe just probably didn't have access to for whatever reason. Oh, you find something like this where you're like, oh, late 80s, early 90s slasher, whatever it may be. You generally have high hopes for it. It's like that's kind of the part of it where it's like a lot of these movies from that time period were doing things that people in movies these days would not do. They say things you wouldn't say, like, not saying that's a good thing, but they're just much more uninhibited. And just from what I've seen from Australian horror, it's just not. Right. So I would love for people to give me recommendations of mean, dark, nasty exploitation Australian movies. I will gladly take them because,
I remember Wolf Creek being pretty harsh.
yeah,
Never
it's
saw it.
it's okay.
Yeah, there's one scene that people talk about, but of that early 2000s extremism movement that was happening, I think that's Australia.
I believe it. Yeah, it is. But it's like part of that 2000s extreme torture porn wave, and I'm just not a big fan of. What I'm looking for is 80s and earlier type stuff. I'll even go up to mid 90s. I'm generally not a fan of the 90s stuff, but Lance knows this. I'm just a mean person and I want movies to be mean. So this movie wasn't mean. So
I was going through the letterbox reviews, the last couple, and somebody who apparently is from Australia, they had logged Blood Moon, which I wish it was called Nightmare Night. They say Nightmare Night in the movie, and I like that title.
yeah.
But anyway, it said, on release in cinemas here in Australia, the film featured a fright break where you had the opportunity to leave for a full refund and miss the final act if you were too afraid, or more likely because you were just bored. I mean, I would have walked, like, if this is a real thing, I would probably have gotten a refund. I mean, when I start a movie, I watch it to the end,
Right,
that's kind of my thing. But in 1990, I would ask for my refund probably because the first half of Blood Moon is, I mean, you kind of want to know what happens at the end, but it's like, where the fuck is this going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found
That's so
that
funny.
I didn't even know from seeing it on an all-encompassing slasher list or something is where I thought I would find this. I found this because I bought what I thought was a Gary Daniels movie called Blood Moon, which I highly recommend, very fun. But instead it was a werewolf Western movie called Blood Moon, and I was bummed. So I was like, well, now I'm gonna have two movies called Blood Moon. And I said, no, I'm gonna have every movie called Blood Moon. And I bought every movie I could find called Blood Moon, which includes Blood Moon, aka Wolf Girl, which is a 2001 movie with Tim Curry, which is actually surprisingly really great.
I think I've heard of that one actually. We said Tim Curry. I was like, oh, I think I remember that. I
Yeah,
haven't seen it, but
it does the strangest thing of like 3/4 of the way through the movie, the villain jerk guy. It's basically just about like this bully being mean to a wolf girl. And then it's revealed in full frontal nudity that he has a micro penis,
okay.
which they show 5 times probably. It's real crazy.
Oh, Grace Jones is in it too.
Yeah, it's very Australian Blood Moon in the way that it introduces that character way late in the movie. And you're like, oh, okay, we'll be seeing a lot of that. But yeah, and then here is the copy of Blood Moon that I have. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
And from the VHS, I guess. But
Okay, so I'm always behind in my listening. You just did Blood Moon, a different Blood Moon last
Yes.
week. Which one was that one?
that was
That was the Gary Daniels one. Okay.
yeah.
Because I saw that and I was very confused and I was like, but we're doing Blood Moon. I'm so confused.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. There is one that I'll probably reach out to both of you and see if you can help me find it in case you have some resources, because there's an Italian giallo called Blood Moon. Of course, it has 3 different names, but I need it. I need it now. And I read a
Okay.
review that somebody wrote who said it's really good. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's this thing I didn't know existed. And it's all because of this, like, going down the Blood Moon rabbit hole. So thank you. Thank you both for watching this Blood Moon. I appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, I thought when Lance told me Blood Moon, I thought when I looked it up, I was like, oh, is it this giallo? And then I looked and I'm like, it's not anywhere, but I do have legal adjacent means of finding films. So yes.
Okay, yeah, I
can look
looked
to that.
everywhere. I checked on all the other sites and things that I look for, and I was like, there's people that know other ways, because I don't feel bad in a situation like that tracking something down, because I just want to
Same.
see it and it doesn't exist anywhere. And so it's like, until it comes out and I can pay the right person, I just need
Yeah.
I need it in my eyes.
Same way. Same. Yeah, I will gladly, if the movie is available somewhere for me to buy or to
Yeah.
rent or whatever, watch on Tubi, so the ad money goes, that's fine.
Yeah.
But unless you're Victor Salva, then I will
No.
never give you any of my money anyway. But
Nothing.
yeah, if the movie is nowhere, then I'm like, okay, well, I want to see your movie and this is the only way I can do it. And that's your fault for not making it available. So there.
Yeah. And I'll buy it when it comes out. I did that. I had a Haruko the Goblin.
Oh, yay. Yeah.
Big fan of that. And then it just came out on Blu-ray and I was like, Well, I'm going to have 2 copies for a while of Ruko the Goblin because I have the weird burn one that I had, and now I have this one. Same thing with Extra. I mean, I probably have too many of those things, but
You can never have too much extra.
right. Any final thoughts for 1990s Blood Moon?
I wish it was better.
I guess that's an overall thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a great weapon. You've got a decent premise.
There's a few good kills.
It's a paint by numbers slasher, and you can't follow the formula.
Right.
You just come on.
I mean, same thing. I think it's overlong. Just that first hour is hard to sit through. And I wish it was called Nightmare Night. But to avoid confusion of situations, that you were put in, Dirk. There's a lot of Blood Moons out there, but now you have a great Blood Moon collection, so maybe it's a good thing.
Sure.
I know. Anytime I tell people, they're like, "Is that a thing?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a thing. I'm the only person that has a Blood Moon collection. Like, it's just what happened." Well, Eric and Lance, thank you both so much for being here. I love your podcast. I look forward to the upcoming episodes. Also, thank you for covering Night Game, which is a movie that I get a lot of joy out of as well.
Yes. I love that movie.
I know. Everyone knows Lance.
Going back to TV and what we're watching now, baseball season has finally started, so that's kind of where I'm at when I'm sitting in front of a TV.
Got it. Yeah. My eyes glazed over when you were actually talking about baseball in the episode. I don't know anything about baseball. I just like people murdering with hooks. So
absolutely.
You know what I fucked up when we were doing double feature picks? I should have picked Rolling Thunder.
Oh.
Duh.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even think of that until afterwards.
Yours is good.
I know, but no, I'm just kidding. But it was like a hook hand. That would have been good too.
You know what? Before we sign off, in the spirit of Unsung Horrors, if you had to pair a movie with this movie, what would you pair with it?
I didn't even think about a double feature for this one.
Yeah.
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Do you have one offhand in your brain, Dirk, or no?
No, I never even thought about it until right now. I guess I would pick, maybe because I just watched it, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not New Beginnings. Is it 3 Leatherface?
Oh, that's a Jeff Burr one, I think.
Yeah, because they spend a lot of time in the woods. A lot of times in the dark woods or in the house. It's basically 2 settings, and I don't like any of the wood stuff. It's just too dark for me. So just in spirit of things happening in the woods, I would throw that out there, I guess.
Yeah, I can see the movie sort of in my head. Something about a traveling couple. They go from city to city and change their identity and are killing people in different cities or something like that. I know there was a couple reviews on Letterboxd that mentioned Psycho just because of the ending. I don't want Psycho touching this movie. I don't want them next to each other.
That would be really rough, yeah.
Have to think about it for a while and go through some stuff that I watched and what would make sense to go with this. I'm honestly stumped for a double feature with Blood Moon.
The killer in this, Miles Sheffield, played by Leon Lissig, I mean, he gave me, I'm trying to think of old man vibes. Just Franco's coming to mind or something. Or
what about Anguish? You know, the film that's all about eyes?
Yeah, with Michael Lerner. That one's nuts.
Yeah.
You would have to pair something interesting up with Blood Moon to keep you going. I mean, Jess Franco's Bloody Moon's good. That's a good slasher.
Yeah, it's got the saw kill too. So I mean, that's
anything. Just put something that you like on it, just to wash the blood.
Whatever double feature it is, that movie goes first, then Blood Moon, and you get the rule where you can walk out and get your refund.
the fright break.
You get that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Seriously, people should watch this movie.
Stop it. God. Seriously, Lance.
I got to.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, but then I bought it. So, you know what? I could keep you both here all night. I admire you both so much. Thank you again for watching Blood Moon and for donating time to talk about it.
Thank you. Thanks again for having us.
Yeah, this was fun, Dirk. Thank you.
The Unsung Horrors podcast. And I'm saying horrors. I think earlier it sounded like I said horrors. That's not what I'm talking about. Horrors. Unsung Horrors podcast. The other one is a different podcast. As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VHS Presents New Releases and Late Returns.